Welcome to the Intrazone Roadmap Pitstop September 2020 edition. This is a bonus monthly show that answers that burning question in your mind, burning. What is rolling out now for SharePoint and related technology in Microsoft 365? I'm Mark Cashman, Senior Product Manager on the Microsoft 365 marketing team, here to help set the ongoing record straight. This month, I talk with Ankita Kirti, our OneDrive product lead for Microsoft 365 marketing. I talked with Ankita about Add to OneDrive, the feature, and several of the recent announcements that benefit both OneDrive and SharePoint. September brought new innovation and a true roadmap of what's to come with Ignite 2020 announcements. We'll focus on what landed this month and take a quick spin by the Ignite highlights and all that they mean. This podcast is your 30 minutes to stay informed and ahead of the ever-curving Microsoft 365 roadmap. First, let's dig into employee engagement. I thought I'd start off with a subtle user experience enhancement that landed in SharePoint for page authors, or the page authoring experience, approximately 1 month before Halloween. When you're in page edit mode and you choose to move a web part from one portion of the page to another, you will see a ghosting effect of the web part you grabbed as a reminder of what you're moving. You know, just a nice apparition of your content. Nothing to worry about. Drag, drop, boom. There it is. Just making the page authoring experience more transparent and engaging. I will tell you, when you're working in the page, it's really nice to see the content that you're moving while you're moving it. Next up is one more for admins, and this is now how you can manage how long guests can access SharePoint and OneDrive documents. In order to better manage sharing, Microsoft 365 admins will be able to create a policy to revoke guest access to SharePoint sites and individual OneDrives after a defined period of time. With this policy, you can limit guest user access, thus guests are no longer active partners and will not retain that indefinite access to documents and files if you had forgotten to revoke access. SharePoint site administrators will receive an email notification advising of upcoming guest user access expirations. 2 notes. This policy is not retroactive. It does not apply to guests who already have access to sites, documents, and files until you put this in place. And after a guest loses access to a site, any user with the ability to share content externally can re-invite the guest to each document or item as needed. Last, in employee engagement, is an improvement coming to Microsoft Search that brings together the Power Platform. Within search results, you will now see Power BI. Data visualizations, we know, are a key content type, so when using Search to determine questions and weigh outcomes, we are now updating Microsoft Search in SharePoint and Office.com to include results from Power BI. This means search results will show Power BI reports, dashboards, and workspaces, which of course can be a very important content type to be discovered. One note, Microsoft Search administrators can disable this feature in Microsoft Search settings through the Microsoft 365 Admin Center. That's it with our employee engagement side of the house. Let's take a pause now and talk with Ankita Kirti to move us into the teamwork side of things to learn about Add to OneDrive and other announcements that were made for OneDrive at Ignite 2020. So we've come to that part of the roadmap where we hear from an expert about one of the particular features that rolled out this month. On the Roadmap Pitstop, I am very pleased to have on the show Ankita Kirti, who is, for all intents purposes, the OneDrive subject matter expert to end all subject matter expertise when it comes to OneDrive. She is our lead OneDrive PMM, and I'm very pleased to have Ankita on the show. Ankita, welcome to the Intrazone.
Thank you for having me, and I'm so excited to be here, the mothership.
We'll get to that later, what that little reference means, because there's something that Ankita works on, if you didn't know, that's very exciting and, of course, very close to home when you think of podcasts from Microsoft. First of all, for those that don't know who Ankita is, Ankita, can you share a little bit about what your role is at Microsoft and maybe what you just survived through this thing we call Ignite?
Yeah, so I'm Ankita Kirti. I'm originally from India. I'm the product marketing manager in the M365 marketing team, responsible for OneDrive, mostly engaging in global product messaging and strategy, roadmap, events, announcements, as well as customer success and adoption, basically all things OneDrive. And what I recently survived was Microsoft Ignite, where we have a great presence from the OneDrive product team. And to all the listeners, I would highly encourage you to go and check out our various sessions in Microsoft Ignite.
Yeah, I think the easiest way to get all to it is type in Ankita OneDrive Ignite, and there will be a flood of things. So if we get a sense that you focus on OneDrive and you drive a lot about how people learn about what it is and what is new and what's coming from the OneDrive engineering team, one kind of softball question that I think is just helpful to understand, especially from you who drives it, is that understanding of what is the role of OneDrive in Microsoft 365. So if I were to give you that softball question to the benefit of people, understanding where we've brought this product to and the direction that it's going, how would you answer that these days?
Yeah, so files are usually the starting point to get all your work done and also staying connected. So be it creating files or accessing files or collaborating and sharing these files. And they can be from memos and presentations, photos, videos, research documents. All of these are kind of fundamental constructs to individual and or team collaboration. And OneDrive here powers this collaborative files experience across Microsoft 365. And these days, with remote working and remote learning, leveraging OneDrive to access, store, and share all your files has become even more important. Whether you are a sales employee who is always on the go and needs to have all your files at your fingertips, or you are an engineer who needs to upload a 100 GB file and access it from anywhere and any device, or you're a student who needs to coordinate on assignments and group projects with peers who are within your school or folks who are like across campuses and geographies. And that to do it in real time using co-authoring and add mentions. Or you can also be a legal or finance advisor who needs to securely share those critical documents. OneDrive has your back and can help you do all of that. And finally, for admins who are adjusting to managing a distributed workforce right now, OneDrive with Microsoft 365 not only empowers them with multiple controls to easily govern their organizational data, it also helps ensure that your data is secure, protected, backed up, and compliant.
And these days, when you think, and I hear you talking about the different personas, the different ways that people are sharing files, whether it's working on something as an individual, sharing it with another peer, or holistically starting off as a shared asset across a team, it's not just the OneDrive container. It's not just my personal set of work files. It's really the collective set of files that I work on and may exist beyond my personal OneDrive or my work OneDrive, which I think leads into not only the basis of hearing how you describe OneDrive, but I think it leads us into this new feature, which is really that mindful way of working with files that may not live or be under what you own as an owner of the file. So the feature is Add to OneDrive, and I think it's a really exciting feature, both as a feature of OneDrive, but also how I think it exemplifies everything you heard Ankita just walk through. Ankita, can you just pick apart a little bit about what is this new feature, Add to OneDrive, and maybe that broader value that it then brings when you mention different personas, different teams, working within Microsoft Teams or SharePoint? How does it bring that together under that moniker of what OneDrive's role in Microsoft 365 is?
Yes, absolutely. That's a great question. So as I mentioned, OneDrive not only makes it easy for you to access and organize your files, as we just walked through, it also helps you to get back to the files that matter the most to you. And that is being done especially now with Add to OneDrive. And often in our work environment, we always think about where can I find that file? And it's a pretty common question. We've asked our colleagues, we've asked our teams, but most often we ask ourselves. So with Add to OneDrive, you can now easily bring all your files and folders beyond the ones you owned, as you rightly said, into your My Files view in OneDrive. So now instead of remembering who shared that particular file that you're looking for, or when and where was it shared, now, when someone shares a folder with you in OneDrive, Microsoft SharePoint, or Microsoft Teams, you can easily add a shortcut to that shared folder to your My Files view, either from the Shared With Me view or from one of your shared libraries. And the best part is that the added folders, they retain all the power and goodness of OneDrive. So it means you can sync them, access them from anywhere and any device. You can share and collaborate on them. And also, they would respect all the existing policies and compliance and security settings. Again, going back to some of the scenarios, if you are a salesman and there is this customer presentation folder that the product group has shared with you, or a folder that is full of contracts that you need to use and repurpose often, or if you are a teacher and need to refer to that folder full of lesson plan guidance or school policies shared by management, simply add it to your OneDrive. It will make accessing and getting back to the files and folders that are important to you extremely easy.
One of the questions that I saw come through both in the early disclosure of this feature and now as it starts to roll out, probably a little less, is am I copying a bunch of folders and files into my OneDrive, or am I referencing them? You mentioned shortcut, but I maybe just want to make sure everybody understands that when you click Add to OneDrive, what it's not doing.
Yeah, so I've heard about this. And if you see the string of the command, it is add shortcut to My Files or add a shortcut to OneDrive. And it's exactly that. You are adding a shortcut. It's not copying all the files. It's an easy to get back to those folders shortcut, but with all the added advantages of the fact that, as I previously said, you can sync it to your device and you can access that shortcut even when you're working on your laptop or your mobile phone.
Gotcha. Okay, so shortcut is the keyword and not copying is the reassurance.
Yes.
So I think with a little better understanding of Add to OneDrive, one of the things that rings true for me and I hope for our audience here on the Interzone is the relationship between OneDrive and SharePoint. And you mentioned Teams, but we know from a files perspective that is backed by SharePoint. So I know at Ignite, and certainly the way that the team often builds and thinks about extending the role of OneDrive is that connection to SharePoint. And so I saw your Ignite OneDrive announcements, both knowing internally, but then of course seeing them externally, that there really were 4 that were shared across OneDrive and SharePoint. And if you put a lens on what are they and what's their role, I just wanted to walk through 4 and get your take on what the feature was and maybe that connection between OneDrive and SharePoint. So the first one was sharing in Teams. What is the sharing experience in Teams, and how do we think about the connection between OneDrive and SharePoint?
In an effort to always provide like a consistent sharing experience across Microsoft 365, which means that no matter where you're sharing your file from, whether it's Office apps, Outlook, OneDrive, or SharePoint, the sharing experience is similar, consistent. And it's also consistent across web, mobile, and desktop. We are bringing some of those sharing capabilities that folks already know and are familiar with to Microsoft Teams. So now users, when they share a document in Microsoft Teams, they will be able to set those familiar sharing and access controls directly within Teams, with an added option that would help them to share a link within a specific private or a group chat. So folks, anyone who joins the chat later on would need to kind of initiate a request access. But the crux of it is there is no change management required for your users once they start sharing in Teams, because the experience would be consistent.
I know from the value that we've had for a while now, when you used to have an attachment on an email, now we hope that more people are doing link sharing, share it as a link. Same idea here, where the value is being able to share it as a link, but in a chat but with control so that you're not oversharing.
Along with link sharing that makes sure that you're not oversharing, I think version control is a big issue that can be resolved if you are sharing links, and everyone who's working on that file has the most updated version.
Yeah, 100% agree. So in the vein of sharing, the other feature that caught my eye with this context of OneDrive and SharePoint integration is the move and keep sharing, which when I first saw this one in the works, I thought, I thought we already did that. But can you explain a little bit around what the move and keep sharing adds now to the OneDrive capability portfolio?
Yeah, this is a very important feature. So and I think it stems from a lot of feedback that we've received as well. So during the course of work, we often create and work on files on our own in our OneDrive, but we eventually need to transfer it to a shared library, basically to extend its reach to a broader group of collaborators. So for example, I'm working on a monthly review presentation in my OneDrive. I've shared it with you and a couple of my teammates, and then I've shared it with my manager who's reviewed it and confirmed that it's good to go. After that, I would move this particular presentation to a folder in my org's shared library. But when I'm doing so, it should not affect the file's original access control. So now, when I transfer this individual file from my OneDrive to a shared library, the sharing permissions, in this case with my manager and a couple of team members, remain intact.
It's like a collection of what have the permissions been, what are the new permissions, and making sure that fewer people who click on it from whenever they got the link or were shared with, it'll always be a positive outcome. That's cool. So with the turn then from thinking about external users and how we work and share with people who are outside of our organization, there's a new motion, I think more for site owners and IT to consider, that you can expire access more programmatically for external users. Can you walk through a little bit about, people who probably are familiar with Microsoft 365 know that there are ways to share externally and there's different things that are available to them, but this puts a little bit more of a lifecycle management to it. Can you explain a little bit more?
We realize, and with OneDrive and SharePoint, and we worked on this together, so it will resonate with everything else that you just said, that we realize a strong teamwork requires us to share and collaborate not only with peers within our organization, but folks who are outside our organization as well. And they can be our partners, our customers, third-party vendors. So to make sure that this access doesn't last forever, and it would also help in avoiding leaking organizational data by accident, admins can now set mandatory expiration period on this guest access. And once this policy is implemented, external users will automatically lose access to the content on a site-by-site level, as you said, that can be managed by SharePoint site administrators, or also on a OneDrive by OneDrive level. So if you are a SharePoint site administrator or a OneDrive owner, you will have the authority to kind of extend or remove access for these selected users.
Yeah, I see it as a big win for admins in whatever way that they've been thinking this move to the cloud. Maybe hopefully an initial perspective or perception was I'm losing a little bit of control of how I used to manage my environment. But with features like this, I see that it gives them exactly what it is that they would want to have as a policy or definition. In the really broad strokes, when we share externally, do it for X amount of time, and then we'll take it from there. I think it's a really positive one for IT. This last one, I see this as partially, you're giving me more work to do, Ankita, but I think it's a really good one for our end users, our admins. But maybe just talk through this consolidation effort of moving a lot already, or initially some of the OneDrive settings into the SharePoint Admin Center.
Yeah, yes, absolutely. And yes, some part of this work is going to come your way. So we always intend, to empower our admins with easy control over organizational data and make them more efficient. And in this effort, later this year, we are converging the OneDrive Admin Center with the SharePoint Admin Center. It will provide a more holistic control and kind of streamline admin experience. So soon, once this is rolled out, admins would be able to control internal and external sharing at both at an organization level or set access controls at a user level across SharePoint and OneDrive in the SharePoint Admin Center. And along with that, they will be able to manage the default storage limit, allow users to receive device notifications, specify retention policies, and also manage sync controls for OneDrive all in one place. So all in the SharePoint Admin Center.
Very cool. Well, I know these aren't the only announcements that were made, but I thought through the lens of this being a little bit closer to a SharePoint show, but the value, of course, of what the OneDrive team is doing and how they blend, whether it's between OneDrive and SharePoint or even inclusive of the experiences in Teams. I know there's a lot that the OneDrive engineering team does, and you got to champion a whole bunch of new announcements. I'll definitely put a link into the show notes for your OneDrive announcements from Ignite. But there is one last thing that I mostly want to hear how things are going. You know, I've talked to you a little bit, but not specifically about your podcast that you do with Jason Moore. So if there's one last thing for us to think about, how is SyncUp going? How is everything that you and Jason are putting out there? What's the reception? What's coming up next? What can you tell us about SyncUp?
So yes, SyncUp is our OneDrive podcast, and it is an inspiration from Mark and the IntraZone podcast. We just completed 1 year last month of sessions, and it has just been a blast. Jason is a great, brilliant co-host. He keeps up with me with all the troubles I create for him. And I must say he does a pretty good job at it. But yeah, the ride's been great. And it's also quite humbling when you go into customer meetings and now they recognize you due to SyncUp or have great stuff to say about the podcast. So that's a feeling that I was not accustomed to, but it's fun. And I would like to say that, we owe a lot of it to you for all the help and inspiration that we got from IntraZone. So thank you, Mark.
Well, you're of course welcome. I mean, getting started is one thing. You have carried it forward in wonderful ways. And I've, of course, caught many of your episodes, and your guests are great guests. And you cover a lot of very focused territory for OneDrive, but also beyond OneDrive based on those connections and who you bring on the show. I think they bring a lot of insight. I think sometimes my favorite parts are, I don't want to call it bantering, if that's too, but I think it's the right word. You and Jason have a great chemistry, and every once in a while there'll just be things that catch my funny bone. So
recently, I think someone asked Jason that, is it just for the show or is it real? And then Jason said you should come and visit and just be a part of the recording, and then you'll realize that all of it is real. I do need to bear all of what Ankita has to say. And as I said, he does a great job at it. So yeah, it's been great. And I have never done a podcast before, obviously. Before I started, to be frank, I did not even listen to so many podcasts. But now I see the advantage that it brings. I love the fact that it's a platform to help our designers and our engineers and our program managers to talk about their vision and their hard work and their learnings. Because everything that you see, no matter how many blogs I write and all, it's all them, it's all their work. So it's amazing to get them to talk, to share their ideas and views. And the small culture corner that we have, where we talk about various aspects of workplace culture and what Microsoft does and what we have seen work. I feel that's also a great thing, and it was purely Jason's idea. It's just amazing to work on the show and then to finally see the outcome.
You both have done a great job. The value that I see, and maybe the impetus of just moving into this world of podcasts, was we have a lot to share. We have a lot to listen to. And based on that listening, we focus on some topics that maybe don't necessarily always land at Ignite or aren't always something that's going to be a big announcement. But it's important, or people are lightly confused or greatly interested. And it's just a way to shine a light on a lot of different topics. But the one thing I most like about doing a podcast, and I see you doing it on SyncUp, is having this year-round, and congratulations on 1 year, having that be an open dialogue to the community that, certainly will hopefully tune in and listen. I encourage them with your show for sure. But off of that, like you said, going into a customer meeting, it's wonderful to hear that they recognize you in the show, but they also probably say, oh, and on that one episode, I heard da-da-da. And, that's something that in our normal marketing beyond the podcast, we wouldn't typically have put out that information. And so I think it's really increased the dialogue year round. That's at least my take on it.
That's completely true. I remember getting this message from a customer in Germany who said, I really liked this month's show. And I would like to tell you that I was drinking juice when you said something to Jason. I don't even remember which podcast. And I spilled the juice because it was so funny. And I was like, wow, that's a great compliment for me.
That is an excellent compliment. We will point everybody that we know to it. It is SyncUp. You can find it at aka.ms/SyncUp. Maybe the word of warning is don't drink juice while listening to the SyncUp. But Ankita, thank you for everything that you did during Ignite. I know it was a busy time. I saw a lot of your output and, of course, everybody that you're working with and how you're helping guide them to get their word out. Thank you for joining the Intrazone, and thanks for sharing more about Add to OneDrive and all of the features that maybe we share across OneDrive and SharePoint.
Thank you for having me, Mark.
Selfishly, for me, it's always great to catch up with Ankita, and I hope on your benefit, it is always great to hear from Ankita to learn what's going on with OneDrive, and specifically this month, to hear the value about Add to OneDrive. If you haven't caught her show with Jason, SyncUp, I highly encourage it to stay up to speed on OneDrive, and of course, get in on the fun because it's a really fun show in how they design it, who they talk to, and of course, if you like that banter between hosts, they have a really nice chemistry. So let's move into teamwork. How do you work with your one-to-one, one-to-many crew on your day-to-day tasks? This particular list of items, and I use list of items purposely, is all about innovations that are coming to lists throughout Microsoft 365. We've got a lot of Microsoft list innovations that are continuing to land, and we've also got some of the list updates coming to SharePoint. So we'll start there with SharePoint. That new list creation experience is now starting to roll out for SharePoint sites. They get that new Create Site visual refresh. When you go to create a new list, you will be able to create a list, and that will leverage the 8 built-in templates. That is something that you can now do whether you're going from the site contents page or from the site homepage when you click New List. That existing list creation flow is a visual refresh, and this aligns with all the updates that you're seeing if you've begun to use the Microsoft List app in Microsoft 365, the icon you would click in the app launcher, or if you're leveraging lists in Teams. It's that same set of capabilities for how you create a list, that same flow, same experience. A lot of great resources that we'll put in for this one, not just on SharePoint, but just all about creating lists within Microsoft 365, SharePoint, and Microsoft Teams. One important feature that we announced when we began to disclose Microsoft lists was the calendar view. And this is if you have any particular information that you're tracking that revolves around a date column, you can now create a new rich view, which gives the ability to visualize your list data on a calendar. One caveat here is this is not a type of calendar that you subscribe to like an Exchange calendar. It's purely a way to visualize a full month across all of the different list items, and you can navigate, of course, month to month. There's a lot of investments made here, and this is our initial rollout of the calendar view. Right alongside calendar view is another view we called gallery view, and this is a new card layout that gives you a great visual way to both present your data. Each row essentially is a card in your gallery view, but you can also configure what the card looks like. And this is something that's dynamic across all rows and is something that you have a lot of great control and looks really, really nice, especially if you have an image within an image column that you're tracking. That makes it pop out really nice within the file. One other area that we've been investing in consistently is the quick edit experience. So there's a lot behind what's been going on with the quick edit experience. If you haven't used it, I highly encourage you to go use it. One of the big things that we've begun to roll out this month and really are announcing a signal of a default view is what we call grid view. But if you've used lists in the past or just recently, that quick edit button will be renamed to edit in grid view. Today, when users go to bulk edit items in a list or a document library, they select the quick edit button in the top action bar. This is what we're renaming that button, edit in grid view. The newly named control provides the same experience, making it easy to quickly update items in bulk And it can now be a default view experience. So you can now go to a list if somebody has chosen the grid view to be the default. A lot more information about Quick Edit now moving not only with a new name, but with a lot of new capabilities. If you haven't gone into that mode, I encourage you to edit in grid view and really experience on how to work with lists quickly, especially in bulk. The last item really is 3 packed into one. We've just been refining a lot of the standard column types and their experiences. So we've updated choice columns, person columns, and yes and no columns to give them a bit more of a modern feel and to have them render better across devices, across web browsers. So Microsoft and SharePoint lists, if you've been using these existing before Microsoft lists, are getting new field editor and renderers. So what that means, first for person, items with a person column will appear using the new pill design. And when you format a person's photo, that's how it will be displayed. You can just select one or more people to add to a person column pretty quickly, and the entry will display with that updated look. Next, items within a choice column will support single, multi-choice, and manual fill as you add items. You'll see an updated formatting right away, and you can update it and remove choice fields and their formatting right in line. Last, with items that are more of a yes-no column, the yes-no column will appear now with a check mark when the value is selected, giving you a little bit more of a visual cue of what has been selected, and of course, a visual cue to people who are consuming the list. So that's it with all of the lists innovations, and that is our main focus for our teamwork section. Let's move on to related technology. The first item with related technology is for all cloud admins out there. Message Center now syncs to Microsoft Planner. This is now generally available. You have a lot of information that arrives in the Message Center, and you need to decide whether to take action or not. And if an action is needed, who performs that action, and how do you track that task to completion? Or maybe you want to make a note of something and tag it for later. You can do all of this and more when you sync your Message Center to Microsoft Planner. This will help you navigate the myriad of information that arrives in the Message Center to help you decide whether or not to act on that information. So if you have things that flow through that aren't necessarily tasks that you want to have assigned to you or anybody that you're working with on the admin side, you can now do that within Planner, but then more effectively assign those tasks that you do want to focus on. This is designed to help you triage Message Center posts, which ultimately lead to you leveraging Microsoft 365 as best as you can at the pace that you want, and of course, delegating those tasks to those that are helping you manage Microsoft 365 holistically. We'll put a link that tells you a lot more on how to take advantage of this, and of course, the fact that it's generally available means you can just try this today. On the other side of the spectrum, a little bit back to our employee engagement side of the house, the next related technology is Yammer reactions. This is something that we're seeing in the social aspects within the enterprise of how you can provide feedback, but without typing something explicitly out. You may just want to show a reaction. You can now express yourself through gratitude and celebration, laughter and sadness, just like in real life. This gives you more ways to respond and express your feelings within the conversations you care most about, while, as a person who's posting, you gain insight on how other people feel about your content and conversation. So there's a lot of new options. You can like, you can love, you can laugh, you can celebrate, you can thank, and of course you can show sadness if something isn't quite to your liking. There's a lot of ways to express yourself in Yammer, and of course, there are a lot of ways to express yourself throughout Microsoft 365, so it's really nice to see this from a community perspective. When you're having those broader discussions within your communities of interest, you can now express yourself to your heart's content, or to your laugh content, or to your celebrate content. Before we go, this last item is a bunch of them squashed into one. We just finished the Ignite 2020 event, and I wanted to highlight some of the things that we disclosed before we get to the teasers. This is like the giant teasers because these are a number of things that we announced and disclosed for the first time. So think of these as teasers into the future, and then we'll land on a couple of October 2020 teasers. So I want to enumerate through some of the things that were very related to SharePoint, OneDrive, and the broader sense of collaboration in Microsoft 365. The first one is the home site app in Teams. This means that there will be a new app icon that you can pin on your left rail of Microsoft Teams to bring in your main company portal that's leveraging SharePoint home site technology, but really as a really nice personalized experience right inside of Teams so you can access more information, especially that broadly distributed information. Next, specific to Microsoft Lists, but applicable to other technologies down the road, is based on one announcement we made called Project Nucleus. And what this means for lists is offline mode. That is something that we're working on to bring, hopefully by end of year, to be able to take your lists offline, but it also brings great performance enhancements both in an online and an offline experience. So you can read a little bit more about Project Nucleus within the lists announcement from Ignite 2020, and offline mode was a really important one that we heard a lot of feedback on and are starting to take beyond planning. We're in development phase. Next, Microsoft Stream is coming to the SharePoint Files platform. What this equates to is you'll be able to externally share videos, plus a whole bunch of consistent capabilities for search, analytics, compliance, and developer extensibility. All the benefits for your company video portal now apply to those videos that were in Microsoft Stream, and that they're based on that SharePoint Files platform gives them a lot of unique capabilities that are new for video, but also make them more consistent when you think of all of the content that you manage. The next one you may have heard in the context of Project Cortex. SharePoint Syntex, aka the first product to come out of Project Cortex, is the side of Project Cortex that brings the advanced AI and machine learning that will amplify human expertise, will help automate content processing, and transform content into knowledge. There was a great signal about what this is, when it's coming, and what you can expect if you were to take advantage of it to bring it into your tenant. So we'll definitely have a link to learn more about SharePoint Syntex. Next is around some new innovation coming from Microsoft Search that's applicable to search results experience in Microsoft Teams. If you've been using Microsoft Search in the context of SharePoint, Office.com, even through some of the Bing integration, this new, really enhanced search results experience will be coming to Microsoft Teams. One graphic says it all, but if you think about the current experience in Teams, this really brings it to a new level. Last two. The first one is News Boost in SharePoint. This will help you prioritize important news and announcements to appear at the top of your feed and other locations within Microsoft 365. So if there's an important news article and you want to prioritize it over others, you'll now be able to give it a boost. And there's a lot of really interesting things that you can do to control what that boost does. And so last is really the summary of all the things that I didn't share, because there are a lot of innovations and a lot of things that we disclosed. And I'll put a link in the show notes so you can read a summary of these and more in Jeff Teeper's Ignite Disclosure blog that's titled Collaboration, Communication, and Knowledge Sharing within Microsoft Teams, SharePoint, and Project Cortex. Definitely a link to have in the show notes, and definitely one that I would encourage you to read from top to bottom if you are interested in this space. And I will say, if you are an audience member ongoing of the Intrazone, that is one link that I wouldn't miss. It's got a lot of great information, some nice visuals, and links to go learn more of the things that really catch your eye. Okay, so now let's get to the real October 2020 teasers. This is the moment where if you think just within a month, visualize what's coming. I've got two teasers for you. Teaser number one, the organization chart web part. This is one where when you want to represent a lot of the who of people that are involved and who they report to and who they work with, this is one you can plop on a page, plop on a team site, plop on a communication site, and get a ton of value for people to navigate other people. Teaser number two, the new file sharing experience is coming to Microsoft Teams. This has been a long, dig project for us. We really, truly believe and we hear the value of having a common sharing experience, and we're very excited to start that rollout for Microsoft Teams. That's it with the teasers. We'll share more within the full SharePoint Roadmap Pitstop October 2020 edition next month. We've added a list of important resource links in the show notes and in the corresponding blog post on the Microsoft Tech community within the SharePoint community blog, giving you all that you need to get up to speed and stay ahead. I hope you've enjoyed this Roadmap Pitstop. It's now time to relax knowing that you're all caught up. If anything still seems funny or confusing, please send me or us comments, ask questions. We want to make sure to clarify as much as we can. We are here to put both our and your best change management foot forward. Until next month, may your September truly be a roadmap mental render to remember.